What's up, you guys? Carlos Toro here, lead boxing writer for Fightful.com. For those of you who are tuning in or will soon tune in, if you don't know what Fightful.com is, it is your premier destination for all things boxing, pro wrestling, and MMA. I'm here to discuss Canelo Alvarez versus Rocky Fielding, the quick fight that it was. And boy, this was a fun fight. A fun fight to watch because Canelo Alvarez is such a treat to watch. And yeah, for those of you tuning in, thank you. If you have any questions, do you want me to answer about the night, or leave your comments on the evening? What do you think of Canelo Alvarez's performance against Rocky Fielding? Leave it on in the chat. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to our new Fightful MMA and boxing channel. But yeah, we're all here for Canelo Alvarez versus Rocky Fielding. If you saw the fight, it went by in a flash, not even 10 minutes long. Canelo Alvarez stops Rocky Fielding with multiple knockdowns, and the referee finally puts a stop to it at 2 minutes and 38 seconds of round number 3. Overall, this was what a lot of people expected. Canelo Alvarez was going to dominate the fight and make it a very, very quick night. I personally did not think heading into this fight that it's going to be as easy for Canelo Alvarez as some may initially have predicted, but man, boy, was I wrong. And I give a lot of credit to Rocky Fielding stepping in there and really trying his best to make it a fight against Canelo Alvarez, but Canelo was just way too strong, way too good, had the absolute perfect game plan. Rocky really did not have a good game plan at all. Instead of, trying to outbox and use his size and length advantage, really he just tried to engage in a lot of close quarter combat with Canelo Alvarez, which really it played right into Canelo's hands. Canelo's game plan was just simply work the body until Rocky could not stand no more, and that's exactly what happened. All 3 rounds featured at least one knockdown, all of them featuring at least one knockdown due to a body shot. So let's really get down to it. Not much to recap, but we will try to recap. You have any questions or have any thoughts on the matter, drop them in the live chat below. But yeah, so first round, Canelo Alvarez just starts working the body. Rocky Fielding kind of start jabbing away at Canelo, doing well, trying to find his range so far, but Canelo quickly closes in and just decimates Rocky Fielding, takes him down with a body shot that really, I think it kind of all started with a right hook upstairs, and really the fight it was a story of Canelo Alvarez just dominating with the body shot. First round, Canelo Alvarez knocks down Rocky Fielding with a body shot. Second round, the same thing. Canelo Alvarez knocks down Rocky Fielding with another body shot. And just the story of that fight, especially the second knockdown, was that Rocky was taking a knee every time Canelo hit that decisive body shot. And Rocky in the second round was looking to his corner, and Sugar Ray Leonard and was kind of saying on commentary, hey, that's not really a good sign if you get knocked down. You look at your corner like that. And Jamie Moore, his trainer, is keep telling Rocky to get up. And Rocky got up, but you could tell just his expression, his facial expressions kind of told you, yeah, I'm good to fight. But his body language was just telling a completely different story. His body cannot handle any more of these Canelo Alvarez shots. And I wrote it on Twitter at Carlos Toro 360. After that first knockdown, I said, this could be a very, very short night for Canelo Alvarez, because it did not look like Rocky was prepared for what would happen if Canelo started to work the body. And really, Canelo Alvarez was just too good. I don't think there was really anyone that thought Rocky Fielding had a great chance of winning this fight, period. I thought this fight maybe could have gone long, and I actually said on the record, I thought maybe Canelo was going to win by stoppage, but I thought it was going to be deep into the fight, 10, 11 rounds. I thought Rocky was going to use his reach advantage. I thought he was going to use the right jab to at least try to keep Canelo Alvarez at bay, maybe try to win some rounds and kind of maybe not stop Canelo Alvarez, because you can't really stop him, but more so you can slow him down and prevent him from hitting his best shots early on in the fight until Canelo Alvarez figures it out and eventually stops Rocky Fielding. Not at all. Even Canelo Alvarez said in the post-fight interview, I'm surprised. I expected him to try to use his reach to outbox me, make this into a boxing fight, not a slugfest. And quite frankly, I was surprised too. So second round, Rocky Fielding gets knocked down, looks at his corner, he gets up, keeps fighting. The third knockdown, which was in the third round, it wasn't a body shot, but it was, I believe, a right hook upstairs. And Rocky kind of went down. He looks at his corner again, and they tell him to get up and to keep fighting. And Rocky did get up. But seconds later, Canelo just worked the body and just hammered home the fact that his power translates so well to 168 pounds. And Canelo hits another body shot to Rocky. Rocky goes on one knee. Referee stops it with less than 30 seconds remaining in the round. And that was it. Canelo Alvarez is your new WBA regular super middleweight champion. That's the secondary title for the WBA. Callum Smith is what's considered the WBA super champion, the top champion for the WBA. But regardless, a world title is a world title, whether it be a primary or a secondary or tertiary world title. Canelo Alvarez is now a champion of 3 different weight classes. He's held the WBC junior middleweight title. He's held a number of titles at middleweight, and now is going to hold on to the title at 168 pounds. Royston Drent, I hope I'm pronouncing the name right, in the live chat saying, Katie Taylor, fight of the night. We will discuss the Katie Taylor fight, and in my opinion, I think it was the best fight of the night. It was a really, really fun fight, especially those last 2 rounds. They were simply phenomenal. Madison Square Garden, for as empty as it was at the time of the card, they got up and they were loud for those last 2 rounds. But we will discuss that more as we get further into the show. So Canelo Alvarez is now technically a dual champion. He's holding a title at middleweight. He's holding a couple of titles at middleweight, and is now holding a title at super middleweight. But he does not plan to remain at 168 pounds, as Canelo Alvarez stated multiple times before the fight, and kind of reiterated that after the fight, saying, listen, my plan is to go back down to middleweight. I don't know against who. I got plenty of options, but I'm going to look it over with my team, see what's out there. There's plenty of options at 160 pounds for him. There's, for a lot of people thought that maybe Canelo Alvarez was going to fight David Lemieux. That's what everyone was thinking until yesterday. David Lemieux was unable to even reach the weigh-ins because of severe, or at least from what appeared to be weight-related dehydration issues. So I don't know what's going to be the status of him being the WBA mandatory challenger at 160 pounds. So we will see in the coming weeks, I suppose. Gray Johnson says, would you agree it's a bit of a no-win situation for Canelo? He's supposed to destroy a guy like Fielding and make it look like a breeze. But if he lost rounds, he would have gotten buried by the fans. Yes, in a way, yes, I do kind of agree, because fans in the United States that didn't really haven't had a chance to see Rocky Fielding. A lot of people are just remembering, they just kept referencing Rocky Fielding's first round knockout loss to Callum Smith a few years back, and they kind of used that as a way to kind of gauge how Rocky is as a fighter, which is kind of an unfair type of comparison. But I think Rocky is has done really well since the Callum Smith loss. He certainly did well in going to Germany, beating Tyron Zog to win the WBA title. I thought Tyron was going to win that fight, and Rocky just dominated and got that, I believe, a 5th round TKO win over Tyron to win the WBA title. But yeah, in reality, listen, for a lot of you go to social media, a lot of people were thinking this Canelo's going to win this easy. He should win this easy. He's a nobody. And I hate to use this term to describe a boxer, but a lot of people are calling Rocky Fielding a bum. I don't agree with that. I don't like calling boxers bums, or I don't like calling any combat sports athlete bums, because I think it takes a lot of guts to even step into the ring to fight. But regardless, Rocky, he put up a brave fight, whatever that means, because he sure as hell didn't really do anything to Canelo Alvarez. Canelo, he looked like he was hurt more from the training than in the actual fight. If he came into the New York during fight week and he kind of saw like one of his eyes looked just a tiny bit bruised, and he kept saying that it wasn't because of the training, but I mean, I don't know how else it was. I don't know if he fell down the stairs or something, but quite frankly, I think Canelo what needed to get this dominant win, because we've seen him with the 2 wars against Gennady Golovkin, and I think some people may have kind of forgotten just how strong of a puncher Canelo Alvarez is, how good of a puncher he is. And some people might think that like he's moving up in weight, so he's going to have a harder time punching guys. But in reality, for a guy like Canelo Alvarez, who's pretty big for 160, he's actually didn't have as much trouble cutting the weight. He had a lot of time to adjust his power to 168, and that's really been a thing for boxers when moving up in weight. It's not so much that you're no longer just bulking up for just to make the weight, but also simply just getting the power to translate from one weight class to another, because you're going to have to develop your power if you're planning on moving up in weight. And Canelo Alvarez, at middleweight, he was already extremely strong for a 160-pound boxer. So going into 168, it was really not much of a problem with it. It was a matter of how he would handle the diet change, the training for 168. I don't really think there was much of an issue with Canelo Alvarez making weight at 168, and he could certainly dominate 168. A fight between him and Callum Smith would be fantastic. I think that'd be the best fight at 168 you can make right now, but Canelo Alvarez is planning to move back down to middleweight. Maybe we could see him back at super middleweight sometime in the future, but right now, it does look like Canelo Alvarez is going to go back to middleweight for May 4th, 2019. Now, someone asking in live chat, any idea on the purses? Not right now, but it's Canelo Alvarez, and he's making that DAZN money. That's $365 million over the course of 11 fights. So you do the math. That's at least 30 million. I think that's 33 million. I could be wrong. My math might be a little off, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. So so imagine this. Canelo Alvarez didn't even fight 3 full rounds, and he made more than $10 million per round. That's insane for a guy like Canelo Alvarez. He got paid in excess of $30 million for what essentially turned out to be a sparring session. And again, I don't mean to discredit Rocky Fielding, because I think he's a great boxer, but he was nowhere near in the stratosphere and nowhere near on the level as Canelo Alvarez. Rocky came into the fight with the wrong game plan, the type of game plan that fit right into Canelo's strategy, which was work the body. And man, he would Canelo would just dominate this fight. It was a reminder of how great he really is. I think with the 2 Golovkin fights, I think people have kind of forgotten just how truly special Golovkin is. Well, remember, he's 28 years old. He's right now technically entering the peak, his physical peak as a fighter, as an athlete. You imagine how he's going to be this good for the entire duration of the DAZN contract. Just think about that for a second. And he's already on a lot of people's lists. He's already an all-time great Mexican boxer. I think he's an all-time great Mexican boxer. Right now, if he retired today, he's certainly in the top 10. I don't know where in the top 10, probably in the bottom 5 of that top 10, but he certainly would be in that top 10 of all-time greatest Mexican boxers. At 28 years old, a 3-weight world champion, 50 wins, 1 loss, and 2 draws. His resume is incredible. Shane Mosley, Miguel Cotto, Gennady Golovkin, Edison Lara, Austin Trout, when he was pretty much being avoided by a lot of people at 154 pounds. He's a guy that has such an incredible run. And I kind of have a feeling that like some people just kind of taking it for granted, maybe not on purpose or consciously, but Canelo is an incredible boxer. He is such a special talent that I really think that if you were to really look back at as Canelo's career, his pro career thus far, you can't help but think that it is one of the all-time great careers of the 21st century. And he truly is, something really, really great. And with what does the zone contract has? Now, Canelo has 10 fights remaining on that contract. There is a lot of names out there for Canelo to fight. Now, the immediate question is, who's he going to fight on May 4th? Well, as I said, David Lemieux is the mandatory challenger to Canelo's WBA title at 160 pounds. He missed weight. He didn't miss weight. He didn't even reach the weigh-ins. His fight against Toriano Johnson, which was supposed to be the co-main event tonight, got canceled. He is the middleweight mandatory challenger, but David Lemieux has had a history of missing weight, of just struggling to get to 160 pounds. I don't know if the WBA is going to keep him as the mandatory challenger. I wouldn't. It's way too much of a risk for a fight to have Canelo against Lemieux and simply have David Lemieux essentially toss a coin to see whether or not he's going to make it to the weigh-ins and make weight. He is better suited at 168. Now, and Gray Johnson in the chat saying Canelo Lemieux at a 168, then it's possible. You can do that. You can do that down the line. I don't think it's going to be in next May because Canelo's insisting on going back to middleweight, but you can certainly do that. David Lemieux, if David Lemieux is such a great puncher and knockout artist at 168 pounds, when he's practically killing himself to make the weight, imagine when now you give him 8 pounds of leeway and 8 pounds to really get healthy, really get his body acclimated to the weight. He could be a real player at 168 pounds. During that brief time when David Lemieux was ranked by the WBC at 168 pounds because everyone thought he was going to fight at super middleweight from now on, before he fought Gary Spike O'Sullivan back in September, I personally thought Lemieux was kind of like right around borderline top 10 super middleweight, as he is, without even taking a good look at him in big fights at 168. You could do that fight at 168 if Canelo eventually goes up in weight, and I think that's still a really attractive fight because Lemieux, I'm sad that he didn't get to fight because Lemieux is such a really, really exciting knockout artist. You look at the Gary Spike O'Sullivan knockout. That was simply phenomenal. You look at the Curtis Stevens knockout from, I think, last year or 2 years ago. That was also really, really fun. Lemieux is a walking knockout of the year candidate every time he steps into the ring. But again, you cannot in good conscience make this fight at 160 pounds. You just cannot. Now, I don't think if you were to do that now, the WBA, I don't think they're that in love with the fight with Canelo Lemieux to just say, well, we don't have a mandatory challenger for the WBA regular super middleweight title. Let's try to make that fight for 168 then and anoint Lemieux as the mandatory challenger of a weight class he really has not fought yet. I don't think it's going to be done. So right now, I say the favorite to fight Canelo Alvarez in May would be Daniel Jacobs. Now, Daniel Jacobs is I guess, network free agent. He's essentially choosing between PBC, who is with broadcast deals with Fox and Showtime, and then you got DAZN. Now, you can make a case for either, but really, for Jacobs as the IBF middleweight champion, really the better fights are by far on DAZN. Money, I don't think that's really going to be weighing much on Daniel Jacobs' mind in terms of selecting one company with the other, because I think both companies have plenty of money to offer Daniel Jacobs. So that I don't think that really makes much of a difference. But really, if you go to PBC, you essentially got Jamal Charlo, which is a really fun fight. I would love to see Daniel Jacobs versus Jamal Charlo, and that's a fight they've been hinting and kind of teasing at for several months now, but I don't think, but the problem is, I think Daniel Jacobs is smart enough to kind of look past like one fight for PBC. And Daniel Jacobs, if he wants to unify and he really wants the Canelo fight, I think I think he is going to remain with the go to the zone and remain with Matchroom Boxing. You can't really knock Matchroom Boxing for signing Daniel Jacobs and giving him the promises they want because they gave him because well they essentially said, listen, you sign with us, we'll give you either the Canelo fight or the Golovkin fight, and we'll give you a middle and we'll do our best to give you a middleweight title fight. Now Eddie Hearn was kind of 1 for 2 on those two promises. He did get him a world title shot, and he did win the IBF title against Sergey Derevianchenko back in October. But with Canelo and Golovkin being busy with the rematch, it was impossible for Eddie Hearn to try to get Jacobs the fight against either of those two guys on HBO. It was not going to happen. But you can certainly make that fight happen on the zone. Jacobs doesn't have to deal with mandatory challengers, and we just don't know about Lemieux and his status. So really, and also unification fights in most cases trump mandatory fights. So you do that fight in May 4, 2019 at the T-Mobile Arena, Canelo Alvarez or Daniel Jacobs. That's a hell of a fight. And I think a lot of people are kind of forgetting the fact that when Daniel Jacobs and Golovkin fought back in March 2017, that fight was really, really close. A lot of people thought Jacobs won that fight. I personally had Golovkin winning, but it was because of that knockdown he scored on Jacobs. In terms of rounds, I actually had it even. So I think people kind of are forgetting just how good Daniel Jacobs is. He's certainly someone that can give Canelo problems. I don't know if I don't know if Jacobs beats Canelo, because that's such an incredibly difficult fight. I think Canelo Alvarez is just getting better and better and better with each fight. I think Canelo wins that, but I certainly would love to see that fight for May 2019. It was another one in the chat says, if we don't see Canelo Triple G3 in May, then it has to be Jacobs. I agree. And regarding Gennady Golovkin, it's, we probably won't know until for the next few weeks where Golovkin is going to end up, whether it be PBC or the Zone. ESPN is making a big move, but I don't think they're going to get him. Anything's possible, but I don't think Golovkin is going to end up with ESPN in Top Rank. I think they want to get the big fights. Golovkin is still good enough to be a champion at 160 pounds. And if you sign with DAZN, you're not just getting all the middleweight champions and all the big middleweights out there. You're also getting a couple of good super middleweights. Let's remember, Callum Smith, I believe, is a Matchroom guy, and Matchroom Boxing is with DAZN. So you can certainly do that if Golovkin kind of eventually goes up to 160 pounds, 168 pounds. So honestly, it's a very, very interesting time in boxing, because we don't know. It's the uncertainty that's kind of keeping us intrigued, because we don't know where Canelo is going to end up. I mean, we don't know where Golovkin is going to end up. We know where Canelo is going to stay on the zone for the next 5 years. We don't know where Golovkin is going to end up. We don't know where Jacobs is going to end up. We don't know what's going to happen with David Lemieux. So that kind of plays a lot of different factors. Now, there's some, I guess, outside fighters looking in that could potentially fight Canelo Alvarez. There's, the Zone kind of hammered home away the possibility of having Jaime Munguia potentially fight Canelo Alvarez one day, which I think that'd be a great fight, but I don't think Jaime Munguia is anywhere near ready for Canelo Alvarez. I don't think he's even ready for guys like Jermell Charlo and Jared Hurd, and even Edison Andy Lara, maybe Lara, but Jaime Munguia is still young. He still has a lot of things to work. He still needs to tighten up his defense. His boxing is exciting. He's fantastic. He's a superstar in the making, but he still needs a little bit more season before we throw him into the lion's den at that point. But if Jaime Munguia feels ready for those fights, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it. Jaime Munguia is defending his WBO junior middleweight title on DAZN on January 26th, if memory serves me correct. They did make kind of the announcement official, although Jaime Munguia has been saying it for a while now. And Takeshi Inoue I believe he had a press conference to announce the fight. It is, January 26th, Jaime Munguia versus Takeshi Inoue. That's an interesting fight. In a way, that's kind of that it is kind of a bizarre fight. A bit of a bizarre trajectory for Jaime Munguia as a world champ, because you go from winning the title against Saddam Ali, then to Liam Smith, then to Brandon Cook, and now Takeshi Inoue. Inoue, it's kind of in that same category where not a lot of people know who Inoue is, but Inoue's a guy out there that could potentially expose some of Jaime Munguia's defensive weaknesses. But I'm not sure if Takeshi Inoue is ready for Munguia's power. That's the thing. If you're not a Jared Hurd or Jermell Charlo, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I can say confidently whether or not you can handle Jaime Munguia's power. So Jaime Munguia is a potential guy you can make you could prep for Canelo Alvarez. And hey, I would not be opposed to it down the line, maybe May Cinco de Mayo 2020 or Mexican Independence Day weekend 2020. I would love that. I think by that point, I think we could very well see Munguia truly develop into a real superstar. And by then we'll know if he's ready for the big fights at 154 and 160. So there's a lot of guys out there. Demetrius Andrade, he's defending his WBO middleweight title in mid-January against Artur Akavov, which is I'm not sure I really quite saw that coming, but for some of you that remember, Artur Akavov fought Billy Joe Saunders all the way back in 2016, late 2016, if I recall. It was Saunders' first WBO middleweight title defense, and I remember Artur Akavov really showed a lot of heart and did pretty well for himself against Billy Joe Saunders. Now, part of that may have been because Billy Joe Saunders did not look good, but quite frankly, outside of the David Lemieux win, Billy Joe Saunders does not really look that great in any of his title fights. So take that as you will. That's an interesting title defense for Demetrius Andrade, but I would not be opposed to it. I think that could be a kind of bit under the radar kind of fight that could end up being a surprisingly decent fight. So I'm not sure what else to talk about Canelo Alvarez. Do you have any more questions or any comments regarding Canelo Alvarez and Rocky Fielding? It is kind of hard to stretch this into a full podcast when we've only really seen less than 3 rounds of this fight, but Canelo Alvarez is truly something special. I'm curious, where do you guys think Canelo Alvarez lands on the all-time Mexican list? Like, when it's all said and done, because it's kind of hard to determine that right now. He's only 28 years old. I think, in my opinion, if he has the second half as good as his first half, I think he could be in that immediate conversation, but it's kind of hard to really definitively have a better career and be a better boxer than Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. It's it's close to impossible. He could be kind of like in that Salvador Sanchez type of level. I think I can see that happening. Yeah, I think at best he'll be a top 3 Mexican boxer all time at best. Maybe top 1, arguably, because I think that's going to end up being a conversation forever. I don't think there's going to Canelo Alvarez, unless he just beats Golovkin, Jacobs, Andrade, Munguia, Calvin Smith, all in consecutive fights in dominant fashion. I just cannot see Canelo Alvarez just being definitively the all-time greatest when you have Chavez Jr. in there. More from the chat. There's big talk for Calvin Smith, Triple G in his stadium here in the UK. I'd be down for that. I mean, listen, Golovkin's a draw in the UK. Some of you forget, but he's a draw. He's a global draw, really, to be honest with you. And Calvin Smith, boy, he became the new darling at 168 pounds by just dominating George Groves in the World Boxing Super Series finals in Saudi Arabia. I did not expect that at all. And Calvin Smith pretty much overpowered George Groves, and he potentially put himself in that immediate conversation for best boxer at 168 pounds. He might as well be. He's better than George Groves. We've already seen that fight. I think he's better than Gilberto Ramirez. The WBC, we don't have a champion because David Benavidez is the champion recently because of his uh positive drug test a couple of months ago. So, and you got Andre Durrell and I don't remember which Durrell, and Andre or Anthony Durrell off the top of my head, but you have one of the Durrell brothers go up against Avni Yildirim, I believe next month or in a couple of months, if memory serves me correctly, on a PPC card on FS1. So really, Callum Smith versus Golovkin, I will love that fight, but I don't know if Golovkin, wants to move up in weight yet. I think he still wants to keep winning titles at 160 pounds. And listen, even if Daniel Jacobs doesn't get the Canelo Alvarez fight for May, I would have no problem having Gennady Golovkin go up against Daniel Jacobs and have that rematch for early summer or deep into the summer. I don't think if Jacobs and Golovkin sign with DAZN, I don't think they would do Jacobs Golovkin so near Canelo Alvarez's May Cinco de Mayo fight. So I think they would leave that for like late June, early July, sort of give time to properly promote that fight. So we may see a Daniel Jacobs title defense right beforehand, and Gennady Golovkin, I don't know, maybe he can sit the entire first half of 2019 out so he can get that fight. So I don't know. So there's a lot of really good fun fights at 160 pounds for DAZN. And quite frankly, I'm excited. I'm definitely excited. This was a fun night. This is a really, really fun night, in my opinion. Some people may not be a fan of certain fights of this Madison Square Garden card, but I certainly enjoyed it for the most part. So again, someone asked in the chat at the start of the show, Katie Taylor fight of the night. Yeah, I think in my opinion, it was the best fight. It had the two best, most exciting rounds of the night. So, but before that, let's start off from the very beginning. Top at the start of the night, right before DAZN went on the air, there was one fight that wasn't on DAZN. I'm not sure why it wasn't when there was nothing preventing them from airing this fight. But Bilal Akaway defeated Victor Fonseca by TKO late in the 7th round. Akaway's a good guy, a good fighter. I'm hearing a lot of people from Australia kind of on Twitter telling me that Bilal Akaway is a very, very good fighter, a very underrated guy. When you kind of look at that super middleweight division, he already owns a win over Giovanni De Carolis, who's a former world champion, and that's already very impressive. And he's only 19 fights into his career, and he's gotten 14 knockout wins. He's a guy that he could be a player much later in 2019, 168 pounds, or in early 2020. But he's certainly someone to watch out for. I wish I could have seen that fight, but I don't know why DAZN didn't bother airing that fight. But then you got to the actual fight, DAZN card. Yves Ulysses Jr. defeated Maximiliano Becerra by unanimous decision. Ulysses looked good in this fight. Didn't really knock him out as a lot of people kind of predicted him would do. He did score 2 knockdowns in the fight, which was the first time Becerra was knocked down in his pro career. It was a good showing by Ulysses, but as you'll see for some of these other Golden Boy fighters, they're not exactly kind of right. They're not at the level where you can say, yeah, he's definitely ready for the world title fights. He's looked good. Nothing impressive in my eyes and a lot of people's eyes as well. So you have Ulysses Jr. getting the winner of Maximiliano Barrera. Lamont Roach Jr. defeated Alberto Mercado by unanimous decision, 99-91, 98-92, 97-93 to retain the WBO International Super Featherweight title. This again, just like Ulysses. Lamont was a guy that a lot of people kind of thought, hey, we're going to see some good knockouts tonight. Didn't really quite get that. Didn't even get a knockdown over Mercado. Mercado looked good in a couple of those rounds. He was hurting. There was a moment early on in the fight where Lamont Roach was kind of stunned a little bit, but it may have been, I didn't really quite get a good look at it, but it may have been because Mercado was accidentally stepped on him and hit him a punch, and Roach was not. It was kind of caught off balance, but overall, this was a Lamont Roach fight, dominated throughout the most part. But there were some good moments of action there, and he needs a few more fights to really get people excited over Lamont Roach being a potential title challenger at super featherweight. But he's on his way. He's on his way. I think he still needs a couple of fights, but he looked good, but he didn't look great in my opinion. Then you have the first world title fight of the night, which I was surprised that they would do this fight so soon on the card. But regardless, it happened. Katie Taylor against Eva Wahlstrom, unified WBA and IBF women's lightweight titles. This was another fight of Katie Taylor that a lot of people thought this is going to be a fun fight, that it's going to be a competitive fight. Well, once again, people were half right on that. It was certainly fun, but in terms of the scorecards, it wasn't really all that competitive. Katie Taylor won all 10 rounds on all 3 judges' scorecards, 190. I had a 190 as well, but this was fun. Katie Taylor was ready to go. She landed power punches throughout the entire fight, just pressured Eva Wahlstrom, who was moving up in weight for the fight. The two were actually amateur rivals from well over a decade ago. But Taylor was, she may have had less experience as a pro fighter heading into the fight, but she was already far and above the better boxers, especially with her being more acclimated to 135 pounds compared to Eva Wahlstrom. So Katie Taylor just keeps hitting Eva with hooks left and right. And the 9th and 10th round, I gotta say, if you're a fan of women's boxing, or if you're on the fence on women's boxing, I highly recommend watching the 9th and 10th rounds. It was exciting. It was back and forth. They were trading shots left and right. It was a flurry after flurry after flurry after flurry, and Katie Taylor got the better of it on most occasions. Eva managed to get some good shots in. The crowd at Madison Square Garden was, I don't think, even half full. I don't think it even reached 5 figures up to that point of the night, and they were on their feet. It was loud. At that point, it was the loudest Madison Square Garden was throughout the entire night up to that point. And Taylor emerged victorious as expected. She's arguably the best women's boxer in the world right now, pound for pound. I think this fight proved it. And now the path is on for Taylor's real super fight. Amanda Serrano signed a 3-fight deal with DAZN. They was kind of announced a couple of months ago, but it wasn't really kind of really pushed on in the news. But a couple of days ago, Serrano said on Twitter that she's going to be challenging for the vacant 115-pound world title. And in January, she didn't announce what card. DAZN has 2 cards, so she could be on either of them. And the plan is for her to win the title, become a 7-division champion, something only Manny Pacquiao has ever done in history. Serrano is the only woman in history to win division titles in 6 divisions. She's the only Puerto Rican to ever do it in 6 divisions. So she's in my opinion, she's a Hall of Famer. And if she wins that 7th title, she makes a good case for being the greatest women's boxer of all time. Her resume is incredible. It's legendary for women's boxing, for not just winning all those different titles, but she's taking a path that's completely different from any other champion of these that's won 4 or 5 divisions in history. She's not someone who started at 115, got to 118, 122, 126, 130, 135, 140. She's not doing that. She's the 140-pound champion. She won that title a couple of months ago. Now she's dropping 25 pounds to win a world title at that weight class, and she has no problem. That's the amazing thing. You look at her in the ring, no matter what weight class, she looks completely healthy, confident, comfortable in whatever weight class. It's unlike anything I've ever seen in boxing, really. And not even Pacquiao did that. Pacquiao wasn't winning titles at super flyweight, then going to lightweight, and then going back down to featherweight. He wasn't doing that. So Amanda Serrano, I think, is about, in my opinion, maybe the most well-respected women's boxer today. And Katie Taylor is certainly a very exciting woman to watch in the ring. And I think this is the fight to make at 135 pounds. There is no doubt in my mind, Amanda Serrano versus Katie Taylor is going to be a hell of a fight. Not just for women's boxing, or a hell of a fight by women's boxing standards. I think it's going to be a hell of a fight by boxing standards. That's how good these two women are. And Katie Taylor provided us tonight with the best fight of the night, with arguably the two most exciting rounds of the night. And I think, in my opinion, I think Katie Taylor is, primed for a major 2019. If she beats Amanda Serrano, that is going to make she, in my opinion, becomes an all-time great, or at least it's in that conversation for all-time great. Because Katie Taylor, just like with Clarissa Shields, she is an Olympic gold medalist. She's won world titles early in her pro career and defending them with relative ease and often. So I think Katie Taylor has the makings of being a real international superstar, if she isn't already, in women's boxing. So I'm excited for Amanda Serrano versus Katie Taylor by the end of 2019. So we move on to the main DAZN card. Ryan Garcia defeating Braulio Rodriguez by knockout in the 5th round. And oh man, this fight was a circus act. This was weird. If you have not seen this fight and you've already wasted your DAZN subscription, I recommend paying the $10 to watch this fight alone. Never mind the Katie Taylor fight, but that is also worth watching. But god damn, Ryan Garcia was in his first fight under Eddie Reynoso, really taking his career to the next step. He looked really, really good. Braulio Rodriguez was the epitome of a boxing clown in this entire fight. First of all, he already proved he was clown heading into the ring. In his walkout music, and I'm sure practically no one on this podcast will understand this reference, but his walkout music was the opening theme song to this Hispanic television show from several decades ago called El Chavo del Ocho. And it was a very, very popular show, TV show. When I was growing up, that was one of my favorite TV shows. And it was very bizarre in its time because it was at a time where you couldn't have child actors. So you had adults playing children. And I'm not talking about some people, adults who could pass for teenagers, for young teens. No, we're talking people, middle-aged people, acting, dressing, talking like children. And his walkout music was the opening theme song to that one. First of all, that got the biggest pop for me of the night. But he didn't stop there. Braulio Rodriguez was knocked down in the first round with a right hook to the temple, to the side of the head and then a left hook to the chin by Ryan Garcia. By that point, I thought they're going to end this fight right there. Braulio Rodriguez gets up. And we go on to proceed for the next 4 rounds. Do the world's worst Ricardo Mayorga impression. He was getting hit left and right. He was getting dominated. He was not putting up a fight at all. But he would just constantly showboat, doing the Ali shuffle, doing all these taunts within the crowd was booing him, and everybody was thinking, what the hell is Braulio Rodriguez doing? He's losing every round in dominant fashion. He's not putting up a fight. He's just throwing all these wild punches left and right. And Ryan Garcia, credit to him, he was comfortable. He wasn't panicking. He looked really, really good. Eddie Reynoso has already done wonders for his career, because if this was before Ryan Garcia got under the tutelage of Eddie Reynoso, I think Braulio could have actually done some damage to Ryan Garcia because Ryan Garcia would have been flustered up there. He would have not known what to do. But Ryan stood his ground, looked great. He dominated. He landed the punches when he needed to, but he didn't pressure. He didn't try to actively go for the knockout. He didn't try to force it. He let the knockout happen naturally. And Braulio Rodriguez was just smiling, sticking his tongue out, doing everything in the book to not win this fight. Hitting low blows, left and right, rapid punches. He already had a point deducted from him at that point. I believe in the fourth round. Tevin Jimenez said Ryan looked good. I agree. He looked way better. He leaps and bounds looked fantastic compared to his last fight. I think under Eddie Reynoso's tutelage, he's going to be a real player in 2019. So Ryan Garcia, dominator, knocked him out in the 5th round. Braulio Rodriguez, really, goddamn, he's a clown. I mean, I'll give him credit if he really, really thought he was getting under Ryan Garcia's skin by doing what he did. Kudos to him, I guess. He had the cojones to attempt something that dumb in essentially enemy territory in front of a pro-Mexican crowd. That takes a lot of guts. Not necessarily a lot of brains, but it certainly takes something to certainly attempt to do that. So we go deep into the main card. Saddam Ali against Mauricio Herrera in a welterweight fight. Saddam Ali wins by unanimous decision. Wide scores all around. It's a boring fight. Not really much to talk about. Mauricio Herrera, this was kind of essentially his last shot at proving himself he's a real world title challenger. I feel sorry for him because he was essentially robbed when he fought Danny Garcia at 140 pounds a few years back. Some people thought he was robbed when he lost to Jose Benavidez Jr. And really, if he had just won one of those two fights, he could have been a world champion, a true world champion, not an interim world champion. But regardless, Saddam Ali dominated, I guess, question mark, but he looked much better at 147 pounds compared to 154. He should stay at 147, but even then, I don't know what options are there for him at 147 because Saddam Ali is essentially stuck. He's on the zone, but all the world champions are with PBC or with ESPN because you have Crawford with Top Rank. And then you have Sean Porter, Keith Thurman, Errol Spence Jr., and Manny Pacquiao with PBC. So there's nothing for Saddam Ali. There really isn't. And I don't even know if he's going to be good enough to eventually challenge for a title, to be honest with you. He might get a shot if PBC and Matchroom and the Golden Boy Promotions work out something, but I really don't think Saddam Ali's prospects at 147 are that much better compared to 154. At the very least, I think Saddam Ali looks better and looks more natural at 147 compared to 154. Let's see. Tevin Jimenez on the live chat saying credit on Braulio Rodriguez's dance moves, but had a weird title fight against Ryan Garcia. Yeah. Weird is certainly one word to describe it. You can call it that. So, co-main event. Tevin Farmer against Francisco Fonseca for the IBF Super Featherweight title. Tevin Farmer, this was an okay fight. I certainly enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot more than a lot of people on social media were calling it. Robert Garcia, who is Mikey Garcia's trainer, he said that he never hopes to see another Tevin Farmer fight again. I would not go that far. I can see why a lot of people were dissatisfied with that fight. It was a lot of defense from Tevin Farmer. He was outboxing him. It was a little more aggressive than Francisco Fonseca. He was outboxing him throughout the first 10 rounds. And Tevin Farmer, he was slick. He was very quick. Very, very good on the defensive side. Francisco Fonseca never really landed a hard punch onto Tevin Farmer. Despite the stats being somewhat even, Fonseca landed 192 power punches, 31% of his power punches, and Tevin Farmer only landed 218. But in reality, Tevin Farmer landed the more effective power punches, and Francisco Fonseca just struggled a lot. Just even though I think a lot of CompuBox kind of registered a lot of Fonseca's punches, but they were not clean shots. They were not, shots where Fonseca did damage to Tevin Farmer. He did not. Tevin Farmer defeats Francisco Fonseca by unanimous decision, 117-111 on all three judges' scorecards. Same. My scorecard also was 117-111. So the story after the fight was that Tevin Farmer said he's going to defend his title in his hometown of Philadelphia in March 2019. He was asked about Gervonta Davis, who has been in an on-again, off-again feud with for essentially a year. A little more than a year, actually, on social media. Tevin Farmer was actually close to being the mandatory challenger to Gervonta Davis's IBF title at the time, but Davis missed weight in August 2017, so he was stripped of the title. Tevin Farmer eventually won that this August in Australia by beating Billy Dibb. And Tevin Farmer has stayed really, really busy. After the fight, funny enough, Tevin Farmer said he graded him, so I think it was like a C+ or something like that. And then Sugar Ray Leonard and Brian Kenny on commentary were saying, "What are you talking about? No, C+. What kind of critic is he? He's got an A+." I would say, I think I wouldn't call it an A or an A+ performance. I'd say B, solid B+, because he did look really, really good. And defensively, he did well enough to keep himself fresh and healthy for a March defense in Philadelphia. I don't think it's going to be anything against anybody too strong. He doesn't have a mandatory challenger because Joe Carroll was supposed to fight a title eliminator last week, and his fight ended in a draw. So we don't know what's going to be. So I don't know the status of Jono Carroll as the IBF Super Featherweight champ, but I suppose you can still make that fight. There's nothing preventing them from making that fight possible. So, Tevin Farmer against Jono Carroll for March 2019. I guess that's certainly a fight to keep him busy. I don't know what's the plan for Tevin Farmer, because maybe you can get Alberto Machado in there, because Machado is being promoted by Miguel Cotto, who has working relationship with Golden Boy Promotions. So that's a fight you could do down the line, and I think that'd be a really, really fun fight, because Machado's this lanky but strong 130-pound fighter, who in my opinion is the rightful WBA champion. He holds the secondary title, but that's all. And Gervonta Davis is the super champion, but Alberto Machado should be the champion, the true 130-pound champion for the WBA. And that's the whole can of worms that I will discuss on another day. But regardless, Tevin Farmer is fighting in Philly. That's not been official or anything, but that's the plan moving forward. And I find it hard to believe that Mushroom and DAZN wouldn't want to have that fight take place. They're making frequent events left and right, and the whole thing about DAZN and with Matchroom fighters and Golden Boy fighters being on that streaming service is to keep them busy, keep them fighting 3-4 times a year. Tevin Farmer's already fought in his third world title fight since August, so not really much of a surprise right there for Tevin Farmer to fight in March, which honestly, that's actually a lengthy break considering what some of these champions on DAZN have been fighting on in terms of time spent in between fights. So overall, I thought this was a good fight, a good card overall. I'm glad that this fight, I don't want to say that I'm happy that a couple of the fights were canceled, because I don't like hearing that David Lemieux is suffering from weight cutting problems. I don't like to hear about that, but I thought the pacing of the card was really good. I thought that, the fact that they constantly kept putting fights on fights and fights one after the other with not much time in between fights, I thought that was really good. I thought for this type of card, you needed that kind of pacing because a lot of the fights were scheduled. I think all of the zone cards were at least scheduled for 10 rounds, one way or another. So I think overall the pacing was good. It ended at around midnight. So midnight on the East Coast. So that's not bad. But overall, I think Matchroom and the Zone should stop it with these very deep cards whenever they do shows in the United States, because let's be honest, if it wasn't for the Lemieux fight being canceled, hell, it's 117 on the East Coast. Who's to say that if Canelo versus Rocky went the distance, they actually might still be fighting right now? So, and really, you should have main events start at 11 p.m. at the latest. I say 10 p.m. Like, start cards at 8 p.m. and have your main event start at 10, 10:30, 11 p.m. Don't make the East Coast suffer because you want to keep the subscription, keep getting more subscriptions at the last second, or keep getting last minute pay-per-view buy. That's you don't do that. That's not good. That's not good for the sport. You want to have as much exposure as possible, and getting those main events at 10 and 11 p.m. That's the way you should do it. So overall, I believe this is the zone card for boxing wise for 2018 in the United States. As I previously said, they do have the zone already has 2 boxing cards in the United States. One is a Golden Boy card, January 26th at the Toyota Center in Houston. Jaime Mugia versus Takeshi Inoue for the WBO junior middleweight title, and Jesus Rojas versus Kanshu for the WBA regular featherweight title. And then Matchroom card is, I believe, January 18. Demetrius Andrade versus Artur Akava for the WBO middleweight title, and Jorge Linares versus Pablo Cesar Cano. I'm assuming that's going to be a junior welterweight fight, as as Jorge Linares is probably now going to look to make a run at a title at 140 pounds, probably at Maurice Hooker's WBO title at that weight class. So, reality, funny enough, that card has taken place in 4 weeks, and we haven't had an announcement in regards to where it's going to be. So I don't know why they didn't make an announcement. So I thought that was pretty weird. As Evan Jimenez said, do you think that Golden Boy will put Canelo up against boxers like Jacobs or Triple G3, or keep him in these easy fights with a DAZN contract? I know I would find it very hard to believe that DAZN is simply going to allow Golden Boy to have Canelo fight 11 quote unquote easy fights. I think we're going to get Canelo versus Jacobs or Andrade or against Munguia or Callum Smith or Triple G at some point in these 11 fights. I don't know when. We might get it as soon as next May, but I don't think we're gonna get like the Rocky Fieldings of the world for 11 fights. First of all, I don't know if you can even find a justifiable reason to do that for 11 fights. Which, if they manage to do it, kudos to them for somehow managing to do it. So, I think that about wraps it up for the podcast. This has been fun. This has been a very eventful night. For more reasons than one, Canelo Alvarez beating Rocky Fielding for the WBA regular super middleweight title. Fun night. I really enjoyed it. Thank you all for being a part of the live chat, answering, getting your questions out there. I love answering your questions. I love talking to everyone about boxing. And quite frankly, I certainly did enjoy the boxing. I love the presentation of the zone. I had no problems with the stream. I don't know about any of you guys who watched the fight. I had no issues whatsoever. So, overall, I thought this night was a success and a good step forward for DAZN in the United States. I don't know what's going to be the subscription numbers. We probably won't find that out until later if they even bother revealing us those numbers. So, Until then, we got you covered with the latest in boxing, MMA, pro wrestling news. Go visit Fightful.com, FightfulBoxing.com, FightfulMMA.com, FightfulWrestle.com. Subscribe to our new Fightful MMA and boxing channel. We're here live streaming every, on the dot regularly with news, with recaps, results of boxing events, MMA news, boxing news. Whenever it happens, myself, Sean Rossap, James Lynch, Showdown Joe, we got you all covered here at Fightful.com. So give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you all for joining us for the Canelo versus Rocky post show. Until then, have a wonderful evening, everybody, and see you next time.